West is increasingly questioning whether Russia will use nuclear weapons. The answer is yes, but under what conditions do you need to lead for weeks? I'm Dmitry Kiselev. Good evening. Now look.
Добрый вечер. Смотрите сейчас.
NATO troops should be sent to Ukraine, and there is no need to be afraid of it. Putin will not use nuclear weapons, according to a lengthy article in the April 22nd issue of the US edition of Foreign Affairs. It has 3 signatures, 2 retired army officers with SHA and a Scottish professor. The article is interesting because it warms up arguments in support of French President Emmanuel Macron's first idea of sending troops to Ukraine. 26. In February, everything starts right with the headline, Europe should send troops to Ukraine, but NATO should not. There's a lot of fun already. First of all, why should I? Second, why are they afraid without Americans? Third, why not NATO? If you want to go to war with Russia, and that's why the NATO bloc was created, why is the bloc not in action at such a critical moment? However, let's still read the tone here, which is also curious. It makes the topic ordinary and makes people accustomed to thinking that the problem can be solved by sending troops. Russia will not revive its empire, and then the noble motives will appear in balance.
In fact, sending European troops would be a perfectly normal response to such a conflict, and Russia's special operation has broken the regional balance of power. Europe has a vital interest in correcting this imbalance.
Listen, didn't the bloody Western-backed coup d'etat in 2014 and Bandera's rise to power disrupt the regional balance of power? Didn't the regional balance of power disrupt NATO's progress? To the east and the bloc's active military development of Ukrainian territory. Haven't the war against the Russians and all Russians in Ukraine broken the regional balance of power? This is how the imbalance was formed. And then the author seems to be pinching himself, asking the main question, how will Putin respond to the entry of Western troops into Ukraine?
The main question is, if European troops are stationed, will Russia really use nuclear weapons? They're going into Ukraine, huh?
Will Russia really use nuclear weapons? But the same author was comforted by how empty it was.
Sooner or later, European leaders will have to ignore Putin's gun-toting because it's just propaganda.
Then Russia must lose again and will lose if the Europeans introduce it into Ukraine.
Moscow's forces will have to face the prospect that an escalation in Europe could make the conflict unprofitable for Russia.
It's still the same topic. Russia must be defeated. The publication is fully in line with the Peace by Force in the 21st Century Bill passed by the US House of Representatives. It is a broad canvas on the construction of international relations. China and Iran are oppressing Russia with SHA, and there is no room at all. In this construction of the world, sovereign Russia has no interests. In general, we don't have any space. This is an absolutely firm position, in which Russia is excluded from any relationship with SHA and does not have any rights in the bill. For example, the detailed legislative framework is included in the confiscation of Russian assets frozen so far. Recall that Russia illegally frozen about 300 billion of our savings in foreign banks.
Заморожено порядка $300 миллиардов наших накоплений, размещенных в иностранных банках.
Of these, only about 5 billion are the United States. Most EU countries have 260 billion, mainly Belgium, about 200. But Americans want to command others through their laws. Set an example and set an international precedent to legalize open robbery. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said the confiscation of Russian assets would violate the international rule of law and have unpredictable consequences. China's position is expounded by the English-language Global Times.
As the main beneficiary of the existing international order, the United States undermines the global rule of law and order, which will have a negative impact on the world financial system and cause related conflicts and even wars.
The Chinese are taking root, the Americans are tightening relations to the point of impossible, and some European countries are planning Russia in this context. Lithuanian President Nausėda launched a direct military conflict in Ukraine.
I welcome the idea of sending a mission to Ukraine.
Estonian Prime Minister Kallas generally calls sending troops to Ukraine defense. Aren't you Freud funnel yet?
We should not be afraid of our own strength. Russia says this or that step is an escalation, but defense is not an escalation.
Finnish Foreign Minister Valtorn.
Western countries, including the United States, should not be so strongly opposed to the idea of sending troops to Ukraine if conditions deteriorate.
Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski.
The presence of NATO forces in Ukraine is not unthinkable.
Now let's get back to the main thing, whether Russia will use nuclear weapons. If NATO troops enter Ukraine to defeat Russia, they want to defeat Russia, but they don't hide it. It even becomes commonplace. They convinced themselves that Russia would not use it. They even wrote that it was not NATO that would enter, but individual European countries. Of course, NATO will be in the business. All the infrastructure, all the coordination, intelligence, logistics, but that's all. What? Poland and Lithuania, Finland will go to Ukraine to fight the Russians, while NATO will smoke from the sidelines. But you didn't. That is to say, this is understandable, so Russia will still apply the main issue. The answer is that there is a clear application. The conflict with the West over Ukraine is growing so fast that it is already a matter of life and death for Russia. And everything in the West is repeating that their goal is to bring us less strategic failure in Ukraine. And they do not agree there. If the plot does develop in this direction, then Russia will have no other choice. How to apply retreat? We can't do it there. It's a disaster for our own country. Putin spoke directly about this.
If we dump these people today, that's for author is ours.
Loss?
They can multiply. And his children will have no future. Because we will feel uncertain. We will be a 3 to 4 country. If we cannot protect ourselves, no one will consider us, and the consequences could be disastrous for Russia's statehood. Here's the answer.
It was also disastrous for Russia's statehood. This is the case in Article 18 of the 20-year decree signed by Putin on the basis of the Russian Federation state policy in the field of nuclear deterrence. The decision to use nuclear weapons is made by the President of the Russian Federation. Article 5D of the same article, where the very existence of the state is threatened. In black and white, another very important nuance, we're not talking about tactical nuclear weapons on the NATO battlefield. They're sleeping, and they see us using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine, infecting territory they don't care about in general. And then at least no grass grows. They need the Ukraine conflict first and foremost as a source of Russia's long-term problems. If so, then recharge. If Russia has to meet the existential challenge, then in this case, we have a strategic nuclear deterrent. It is no coincidence that Putin ordered them to be placed on special combat duty on February 27, 2022.
приказал привести их в особый режим боевого дежурства.
Senior officials from major NATO countries have also made aggressive remarks. Our country, so. I order the Minister of Defense and the Chief of General Staff to transfer the Russian Army's deterrent forces to a special combat mission.
Since then, Russia's nuclear trinity is strategic missile force, strategic aviation, and nuclear submarine missile carrier. This is our deterrent force at the ready.
Это и есть наши силы сдерживания, наготове.
Of course, from a military technical point of view, we are ready, they keep us on alert. This is 1 and 2, and this is also generally accepted by our triad. The nuclear trinity. It is more modern than any other triad of this kind. It's just that we actually have more Americans and we've made more progress here. We have more modern ones. And the whole nuclear component, in terms of the whole carrier and charge, we have roughly equal, but we are more modern, but all the experts know that. Everyone knows, but that doesn't mean we have to measure here. Well, those who need it also need to know the number of carriers and warheads. I repeat, experts, the military, they know this very well. They are now setting the task for P to increase novelty in this modernity. They have a corresponding plan there. Well, we know that. They are developing their own components. We too. But that doesn't mean that. In my opinion, you are not ready to launch this nuclear war tomorrow, but you want to. Well, we're ready to do that.
But now the question still needs to be clarified. What will the United States stand idly by? Obviously, not with SH, but with NATO as a key power. If NATO countries send troops to Ukraine to bring strategic failure to Russia, then the moment that Putin once said will come. If there is no Russia, why do we need peace?
Не будет России. Тогда уж от нас полетит.
Then everything will fly away from us. And their Sarmat, layers and vanguard will be in sight. American decision-making centers, land and sea launchers. France, as a nuclear power, will have to disarm immediately, and the British Isles will simply sink. The technology for this is available, and we talked about it in some way, but it's best not to do so. And this is not propaganda.
Не пропаганда.